In this lesson, we'll paint a quick diffuse texture for our character's hair. Alright, fantastic. So I've got the head shell, or the head patch rather, currently visible. Now, the hair for this particular asset is a little different. It may be a little different than what you're used to seeing, but if we come over here to the UV view, let me just kind of zoom out here. You're going to see that the hair is composed of what looks like 5 shells. So there's this shell here. Let me just go ahead and switch to face mode, and I'll hold S and select each one of these shells. There's a shell here. There's a shell over here, here, and here. Now, if we come back to the orthographic view, you can see here that not all of the shells were selected. Well, we've got kind of just a few of them. Now, the reason being is because a lot of this hair right here is overlapping UVs. So if we come back, this particular shell here and this particular shell here contain a lot of different shells underneath them. So if we wanted to select all of them here, we could actually come over and switch the facing mode for the selection tool from front to through. And now if I come over here and select these, we'll just drag a selection over each one of these, holding Shift. And I jump back over here. Now if I hold down the S key, you can see all of the shells have been selected. So now we need to basically paint a diffuse texture for this hair. Now I want him to have dark brown hair, so what's probably a good place to start would be with the eyebrows. We've already sort of painted some diffuse color for those here. So let me go ahead and grab my paint tool, and I'll just hold the C key, and let's just sample that color. You can see over here it has been added. So this is going to be a nice base color to start with. Let's go back to the UV view. We'll just choose maybe a hard round brush, bump the flow up here, turn off the flow pressure control, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint in a quick coat of this color. And we'll come back over here. And fantastic. So now looking at that color is great, but more than likely if a hair is that color, you're going to actually see a lot darker color because of all the shadow that's underneath it. So I'm going to use this for my lighter color, if you will. And what I'd like to do is, let me just hit the X key, and I'll go ahead and sample this. So now I have that same color as both my background and foreground. So now what I can do is hold J, and we can go ahead and grab a little darker color here. I'm going to grab this guy, pull it down. And if we come in and just paint a little bit here, that's probably about right as far as working from dark to light. So that's probably a better color to start with. Let's go ahead and do that in the UV view just so we can make sure we get complete coverage. All right, fantastic. So those 4 shells have now been colored in that darker color. You know, that might actually be just a little bit too dark. Let me just kind of tweak this a little bit. And a little bit darker, kind of finding that happy medium. All right, fantastic. So that'll work. So when it comes to painting this hair, it's going to be really difficult to paint kind of this hair texture here in the 3D view, just because of the nature of how this hair is created. This hair is basically a series of planes. Now we're going to revisit this this particular part of the model in the last lesson of this course when we work on a transparency map. But let's come back over here to the UV and look at the structure of these. So in this particular shell right here, this is kind of the hair that's right over his forehead, sort of his bangs. Now this flat edge, kind of right down here, this runs right along his scalp. These little pieces right here are meant to be the ends of the hair. So let's go ahead and paint some striations for these. So I'll hit the X key to bring back my other color. Remember this color? And we'll hold the K key down, and let's go ahead and grab that hard surface metal scratches brush. Again, we used that earlier to paint the eyebrows. I'll hold the R key and shrink that down some. And we can now begin to start to basically really quickly make some striations here. Now, let me go ahead and bake that so we can look at it. You can see that's actually pretty small, so we might come in here and make that brush a little bit larger. And I'm looking at the amount of contrast between the two colors, the base color that we laid down and the color that I'm painting in here now. And I'm not really very satisfied with that. So let's see if we might be able to fix that. Let's come back over to this color here, and let's brighten that guy up some. Maybe desaturate some too. So now we're working with those two colors. So now this color is going to be really, really bright and really probably too intense on its own. But if we go ahead and check our brush editor here, we can come over and turn on that color property and allow that to kind of help us to layer those colors together. So remember that basically alternates between background and foreground based on pen pressure. So we're going to come in here and just start to basically paint in some of those striations. Just come in here and layer those in. Now I'm looking at these tips of the hair. I don't want to make striations like this. I want to make sure that we're drawing these basically with the direction of the hair. So let me go ahead and check my colors here. We can go ahead and hit the X key if we want to and see how that affects the colors. You can see now I'm starting to get a little bit brighter colors. We might come back in and hit some of these strands a little bit more. Again, kind of working back and forth between background and foreground by hitting the X key. Now I know that some of these edges are going to end up being hidden by the transparency map, but we still want to make sure that the direction that the hair is growing is correct. So we'll come in here sort of like that. And this one seems to be growing a little bit in this direction. This is pretty typical game style hair. You're dealing with planes like this. So we'll come in and hit the X key and bring in some of those brighter browns. Sort of like that. So this is really going to just be a matter of some time spent in terms of layering in these strokes. I'll go ahead and do one shell for you guys. I think that you'll find if you're doing the entire head of hair that it speeds up quite a lot, especially when you start working on those overlapping UVs. Those really save a lot of time in terms of having to paint each individual shell. So just come in here and paint a little bit more. And we've almost made it through this shell. All right, let's go ahead and check that out. We'll go back to the orthographic view. And you can kind of see, if we look here, now there's some interpenetrating geometry, but for the most part, that hair is starting to look pretty good. As a matter of fact, I may have gone a little overboard in terms of how bright that brown is. I really wanted to go with a little darker brown, so it might be a good idea to come back over here and maybe sample some of that darker brown and begin to paint it back in here, just to kind of blend in some of these areas. But if you see here, there are 4 shells. Again, we've got those 2 right there, which are kind of for the front bang area, as well as this one over here. Actually, 5 shells. And then we've got these 2 right here. So for these, if we were to come over and start to paint this guy here, we'll come in and just kind of lay down some striations or some strand-like strokes. And come in and add a little bit more of those bright areas. What I might do is come in and just kind of touch these guys up all at once, adding some more of those darker values back in. So we'll go ahead and bake that down. And now you can see that covered a whole lot of his hair just with that one shell. That covered kind of the top portion of his crown. So this next shell that's the same shape or pretty similar shape up here, it's going to cover kind of the rest of those underneath. So we'll just come in and paint in some hair-like strokes here. bake that down. And there we go. Hair's looking really pretty good. Outside of the fact that we still have a couple of shells left to paint, and the fact that we might want it to be a little bit darker. Now, keep in mind that we don't have to always go back in and paint that. We could simply add an adjustment stack here for levels. And if we go ahead and open that guy up, pin it down, come in here and adjust the levels over here. Again, looking at kind of the brighter values, we want to bring those down, so we could come in and adjust the white out. Start to pull that down a little bit. Really kind of darken that hair up. So anyways, that is how we're going to paint the hair for our character here. Now, don't forget, the hair for this character also means the eyelashes. So we've got that geometry hidden. If I go ahead and hit the home key, we can bring it back over here. Actually, we'll just go ahead and right-click and show all, and then hide the lenses here. And there's the geometry for the eyelashes. So I would use the exact same technique for painting those planes as well. So when we come back in the next lesson, though, we're going to kind of take a holistic view of the character and look at kind of him in general. Looking at him, he still seems to be very clean and very tidy. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and do a dirt pass in the next lesson.